We'll wait just a few more minutes to see if a couple more people will join us, but if not, it's being recorded, so they'll have access to it. So we'll start around 9:05.
Okay, I think we can get started.
Sounds good. So I'll go ahead and screen share if you all will let me know if you can. Let's see. Looks like Blake turned that off. Let me text him really quick.
Okay.
Okay. Blake hasn't responded, but what we're gonna do is we're gonna link our slides in the chat. So if you all want to open this up and go through it with us, that way we can kind of be talking about it, and so you all can see what we've got on there too. Let me know if that link doesn't work.
Rebecca, it's saying access denied.
Okay, 1 second. All right, now try that.
Okay, I got it now.
Cool. All right, so we'll go ahead and get started. Do just a quick introduction. My name's Rebecca. I'm currently serving as your state president, and this fall I will be attending the U.S. Air Force Academy to major in aeronautical engineering.
Hi everyone, my name is Neha. I'm the Northern Virginia Regional President for this year. Oh, I think there's an echo. Okay, it's good now. I will be attending Cornell University in the fall, and I plan to study computer science and maybe economics. All right, so you guys can move to the second slide. And so here you have a timeline overview. So this is kind of an overview of your 4 years. And I don't know if you guys are freshman, sophomore, junior, but you can see on the left-hand side for underclassmen years, which are specifically freshman, sophomore years, it's mostly all about focusing on your extracurriculars and school. So there's a really thin balance between them, and you don't want to spread yourself too thin, but you also don't want to just be involved in school. So I would really say work hard for your good grades and definitely try to get involved with a few activities in sports. And these can be in school or outside of school, depending on how much your school offers. And then as you move into junior and early senior year, that's when you begin considering standardized testing. And so for college applications, it's the SAT or ACT, and there's virtually no difference between what colleges prefer, but usually conventionally you take it only up to 3 times because any more than that can look a little off to colleges. And then in the early fall, by the latest, you should have finalized your college list. And so we'll get more into this later, but you should definitely do a lot of research on what universities you want to apply to and consider what they offer, like the location, the price, the program, etc. And also balance your list. And we'll get more into that later as well. And then in October and November of your senior year, this is when you begin checking in on your teacher and counselor recommendations and also beginning your early applications. So at my school, at least, we ask teachers for recs in the spring of junior year. There's a very kind of strict process, but I think it depends on your school, and you can talk to your counselor about when is a recommended time to ask your teachers. But during this fall of your senior year is when you begin early applications and also uploading documents into the platforms, which we can talk more about later as well. And then in January and February of your senior year, this is when regular decision applications are due. And so a really big tip is not to procrastinate these. I know a couple people who didn't really work on these until winter break, and then they just were miserable and didn't get to spend time with their families. And so you definitely do not want to procrastinate college applications. And then sometime around May 1st is the national commit deadline. And so this is when you have to let a college know that you'll be attending there in the fall. And again, there's a lot of factors to consider, especially financial aid. And that's how you'll make an informed decision. So now we can move on to slide 3.
So when you're applying to college, there are several different ways you can go about this, and there's also several different applications. So the 2 most common are the Common App and the Coalition application. Both will eventually get you to the same endpoint. Some colleges accept one, some colleges accept both. So when you're doing your research, you really want to see which application that college accepts. And that way, if the majority of your schools accept the Common App but not Coalition, you'll know that you want to get started with the Common App and make your profile there. So the Common App and Coalition will open for the class of 2022 in around July to August to start actually applying to schools. But right now, even as a freshman, you can go ahead and start making your profile. and start filling out important information. That'll just save you some time and kind of some headache later on down the road. So talking about your profile, this is a little bit on the next slide. Some of the information that you'll need to go ahead and do that is just some personal information, your contact information, just name, address, things like that, as well as some information about your high school, your class size, location, any dual enrollment credits that you might have, and then your classes that you've taken 9th through 11th grade or 9th through 10th grade, just depending on whatever grade you're at. Your SAT and ACT scores. Several schools for this upcoming admission cycle have already decided that they will go test optional. So that is your choice whether you submit those or not. And as well as AP exams and then any honors awards, kind of like you would put on a resume. So we'll talk about, and this is on the next slide, some application changes. Most of the time, these applications stay the same. The only big thing that changes year to year is some of the essay prompts. There is a Common App essay and a coalition essay. All the schools I applied to did not require either one. They had their own supplemental essays, so that's just another thing to look at. So if one school that you're applying to requires that you complete the Common App essay, you can choose from several different topics. So just keep an eye out for any topics that will come out once those applications officially open up for your class. And then on the next slide, going back to test optional, these are some of the schools that have already said that they're going to go test optional for this upcoming school year, school cycle. So Virginia Tech, George Mason, several of those. Virginia Commonwealth, they have gone test flexible. So as long as you have above a 3.3 GPA, you are not required to submit test scores. Again, take the test optional to your best interest. If you've taken a test and you have really good scores, I would suggest go ahead and submitting those. One thing you can kind of do is look the 25th and 75th percentile. You can just Google, just look up your school and then 25th percentile SAT, 75th percentile SAT. And if your score is somewhere in between there or even higher, I would go ahead and submit just because it does provide a little bit of a boost to your application. But then again, if you don't submit, it's not going to negatively affect you.
I also want to add, for those of you who haven't taken standardized testing, the way it works is you'll be the one taking the SAT or the ACT, and then you'll get your score maybe a couple weeks later, and then that score doesn't get sent to colleges unless you specifically say so. So I know as an underclassman, I thought I'll take the SAT, then whatever I get will go to all my colleges. That's not true. It's really up to you about what score you want to send to what colleges. So it's very flexible, basically. And so moving on to the college essay slide. So first you have a personal statement. Like Rebecca mentioned, this is an essay that goes to all the colleges on your list. And it's really a crucial insight into your personality that the people reading your essay, they want to know, what is this kid like beyond school, beyond their grades, beyond their test scores. And so you really want to highlight the best part of yourself. And sometimes that means avoiding cliches, which are very overdone. Like, for example, sports injury, mission trips, family tragedy, etc. Not saying that you can't do these, but if you are doing them, you have to do them very well and kind of be more nuanced than the average person who would write them. And I would definitely recommend brainstorming as soon as possible. You definitely want to start early and have time for the writing process. I'm sure, as you all know, it starts with brainstorming, then a draft, then proofreading, then editing, peer editing, so on. So there's a lot of time that goes into an essay, and often the first draft is not something that you want to send to colleges. So really give yourself a lot of time for that. And there's a link on the slide here you guys can click on. There are some really good examples highlighted by the Johns Hopkins application committee. And so these are some essays that they thought stood out among thousands of applications. So if you guys read these, you can get a really good clue on what they're looking for. And moving on to the next slide. For supplementals, these are what the university asks its applicants to write. So let's say, for example, I'm applying to Cornell, then I will send my personal statement along with, it's been a long day, along with Cornell supplemental. So the length and the amount of supplementals depend on the university. So I know for Cornell, they only had one really long supplemental, but I've applied to other colleges where they have, like, let's say 5 really small ones. So you do not want to write generic responses. For example, you don't want to write, I want to attend X university because it has a top ranked pre-med program and I like the mascot. Instead, you would take a fact you know about the university and relate it to yourself. So you could say, the blank program interests me because of my experience in blank. So you're not just writing about the university, you're writing about how you would be a good fit for the university. And that's really what they're looking for when they read your supplemental. And so to do this, you have to do lots and lots of specific research on the university and write something that's meaningful and personal to you. A good rule of thumb is if someone can remove your name from the essay and it can work for someone else, that's not a good essay. You should be very unique to yourself. And if you need help, you can always attend college hosted sessions, reach out to admissions reps, and find resources on YouTube. I know for the last one, I didn't really know that a lot of people share their essays on YouTube, but if you Google Common App personal statement, then you'll find a lot of videos of people kind of talking about what went well for them. So I would definitely recommend that. And so for choosing colleges to apply to, this is something that differs for a lot of people, but overall, you do not want to overwhelm yourself and apply to more than around 12 because it just will be incredibly stressful on you. So some factors to consider when you're making your college list are the cost of the school, the major or the program that you're applying for, the size of the school, the location, the atmosphere, demographics, and also job placement. So graduates of this university, how easily can they find jobs? How strong is the alumni network? Scholarships, financial aid, etc. So all colleges on your list can be categorized into 3 different categories, and they have different names depending on what you search up online, but I call them reach, target, and safeties. So for reach schools, these are schools where the acceptance rate is below 20 to 30%. So it's a reach because it's kind of like you're reaching for admission there. You might not get it. And then a target school is a school that you have a decent chance at. It's a target because you can hit the target. And then a safety would be anything that has admission rate over 80%. And so this is something you're expecting to get into. So the pyramid on the right represents finding a good balance of these 3. So you shouldn't apply to too many reach schools. Target should make up the majority of your schools and then also have a couple safeties. So I wouldn't say necessarily follow the pyramid structure, but you should have at least, I think, 2 safeties, just so that if you find yourself not able to attend any of the universities, you always have a backup. And so different application deadlines. So there's a lot, and these can be kind of confusing, but early decision is a binding contract that you make with only one college. And so this can be used to your advantage. If you have a number 1 choice, you know you really want to go there and you can afford it, then I would say use the early decision advantage. However, you definitely have to consider cost because colleges are a little bit sneaky about this. And if they know you're applying early decision, they know they have you hooked. And if they admit you, then you have to come. So they might give you less aid. But also there is, in the contract, there's a clause that says, I think it's called like a parachute clause or something. And so you can officially reject your early decision acceptance if you can prove to the university that your family can't afford it. But again, that's something you probably don't really want to get into. So for early decision, do a little bit of research on the university and make sure it's your absolute number 1 choice. I personally applied to early decision because I knew Cornell was right for me, but it differs for everyone. And so early action is non-binding, which means if you get in, you don't have to go. And you can apply to more than 1 school. It gives you competitive edge. So if you apply early action, the college knows that you're making an effort to send in your application early, that you really want to go there. However, the early deadlines can sometimes be all the way in October. And so since the school year starts a little bit before that, you really, if you're applying early action, you want to get started on it in the summer more. And then the next one is restrictive early action. So this is basically early action, but for private universities. So it is also non-binding. However, it's rarely offered. It's only offered by Harvard, Yale, Stanford, and a couple others that I remember off the top of my head. And so if you apply REA, then you can't apply anywhere else EA. So for example, let's say I apply restrictive early action to Stanford. That means I can't apply early action to University of Virginia or Virginia Tech, things like that. And so the next one is rolling. And rolling deadlines give you a large window of time to apply, let's say from October 1st to June. And they say you can send in your application at any time. However, it is first come, first serve. So let's say you apply in June, maybe all the spots are taken. So if you're applying to university with a rolling deadline, definitely think about doing that in the summer or in the early fall. And these universities are often pretty lenient with their scholarships. So if you apply early, there's a high chance that you'll be considered for a scholarship. So off the top of my head, I know 2 universities I applied to, University of Pittsburgh and Penn State, they both were rolling. And so these universities also give out great scholarships. So I would look into that. And then the last one is regular decision. So this is the most common application type. It's usually due in January, sometimes February, and the decision comes out by March. And then you commit by, it says April here, but usually it's May. So I would say most people, they apply RD or regular decision to most of their schools. Okay, and so this is a flow chart, and it looks a little bit confusing at first, but I just made this because I didn't understand some of these terms when I was an underclassman. So on the left-hand side, you see early applications. So there's 3 different outcomes when you submit EA, and that is accepted, deferred, and denied. And so deferred, what does that mean? It just means your application, they want to think about it more. So they push you into the regular application pool. So basically your application gets a second glance. And then in the regular applications, again, there's 3 outcomes: accepted, waitlisted, denied. And so when you get deferred, you can then be accepted, waitlisted, or denied. And then if you get waitlisted, then you are like officially put on the university's waitlist. And then if you want to attend that university, but you're on the waitlist, then you would commit to the waitlist by May 1st. And that's kind of confusing, but you can read more about it online.
So next we're going to talk about some scholarships. Each university has their own system of scholarships, whether it's foundational scholarships, merit scholarships that they award. And so these can be very competitive, but normally when you submit your college application and continue that process, those universities will ask you to then submit a general scholarship application where they see if you're eligible for any of their scholarships. But a good way to look for scholarships is through some of these different websites like Niche, Tallow. You just make a free account, and a lot of them are no essay. They're smaller scholarships, but the smaller and the more local the scholarship is, the more likely you are to get those. So I would personally suggest, and you can even start now as a junior, as a sophomore, as a freshman, you can start looking for small and local scholarships, because I know several in my area. You can apply even as early as your freshman year. And so these smaller and local scholarships will help you. You're more likely to get awarded these than larger national ones like the Coca-Cola Foundation or even the STAMP scholarship. But that shouldn't stop you from applying to the larger ones. But just try and have a good balance between the ones you apply through your university, through larger national entities, and then smaller scholarships. And
So
I
for
also
teaching,
I was just gonna talk a little bit about summer programs as well. A lot of universities offer summer programs that will allow you to explore the university, maybe explore a specific program, and these can be very beneficial to potentially getting a scholarship. I know personally one of my friends from my high school, she participated in a summer program through the University of Chicago, and that allowed her to get a full academic scholarship to the university, and so she'll be attending there this fall. And so summer programs are a really interesting way to see more about what life is like as a student at that college. This year, a lot of the summer programs are virtual, but then some also have where you can go stay on campus for a week or 2 weeks and really check out your major, what it's like being a student there. So those are another really good opportunity to explore universities that you're interested in.
So for teacher recommendations, I mentioned before, you can ask your teachers the summer before your junior year, no, summer after junior year. But usually at my school, we ask during spring break. And so usually you just need to ask 2 teachers, but if you check the colleges on your list and what they require, it might be a little bit different. So for example, I know Carnegie Mellon University requires 1 math or science teacher beyond just having 2 teachers. And usually you ask 2 teachers from junior year, maybe sophomore year. I don't know too many people that ask their freshman year teachers, and I know asking senior year teachers is not recommended because they've only known you for maybe 1 month before your applications are due. And so ask teachers who know you beyond the kid who just shows up to class and like does the bare minimum. So for example, does that teacher sponsor a club that you do? Did they compliment a project you did? Do they talk about how great you are in their class? Things like that. I think you can get a general idea based on your interactions with the teacher. And so at my school, we provide all the information the teacher needs by sending them like our resumes or answering questions. So provide all this information without being too pushy. So my counselor has told us, don't keep asking your teachers, like, how far are you with my rec? When will this be done? Things like that. And also you should waive your right to read your recommendation. So you don't get to read it. And this is because colleges kind of, what I've heard is they think that if you've read your recommendation, you've had something to do with it. So usually you don't get to read your recommendation, and that's okay.
So next we'll kind of talk about some financial aid. So in order to apply for financial aid, you'll need to complete the Fafsa, which is the free application for federal student aid. And so this form is basically all the information about your parents' income, any assets that they have. So then colleges can then determine how much need that or how much financial aid that they should award you. And so this is kind of a tedious process, but the more you understand it, the easier it'll be. And you'll see it's not as entirely complicated as they make it out to be. So in order to complete the FAFSA, you do this the fall of your senior year. So you'll need to create an FSA ID. And so this is just information, kind of like your login. That way you can log into the application online. And then to actually complete your FAFSA, you'll need some information. So you'll need your social security number, your federal income tax returns, your parents, their W-2 forms, any records of money that they've earned. You'll need some bank statements and records, records of untaxed income. So this information will be provided to your parents once they sign up for their FSA ID. So you as a student will need to create an ID, and then your parents will as well. And all this information can be found on the FAFSA website. So the earlier you do the FAFSA, the more likely you are to receive some aid. So I would definitely suggest once it opens usually around October, to go ahead and get a jump on that. And so then you'll select some schools that you're interested in, but the schools that you select there don't bind you to anything. That's just for them to get an idea of where you will submit your FAFSA to.
And so for staying organized, spreadsheets will definitely be your best friend. Even if you're not an organized person, spreadsheets are definitely the way to keep all this information organized because there's a lot of it. And so when I made my spreadsheet, some info I included was the deadlines of the school, how much it costs to apply to the school, because that's a thing also, and then the category of the school. So if it's a reach, a target, safety, etc. And so Google Sheets has this checkbox feature. And so as my teachers uploaded their recs, as my counselor uploaded her rec, as I finished writing my essays, as I made payments, I checked the boxes. And so as soon as I log into my spreadsheet, I can see exactly where I am. And so if you need a little help to get started, there's a really great free template here. And honestly, if you just Google college spreadsheet organizer, you're going to find a lot of things online as well. And so for some interview tips, interviews are not always required for some of the colleges I applied to. They're more optional, and it depends on the university, but sometimes they don't even consider the interview when they consider you as an applicant. It's more just for you to talk to an alumni and hear about their perspective. But Rebecca, do you want to talk about your perspective with the interview process?
Yes. So the only college I had an interview with was the Air Force Academy. And so this was a little bit different than some of the other schools. Um, so with our interview, it lasted about 2.5 hours. I know most colleges will definitely not be that long, but you want to go into the interview as prepared as possible. So what they did for me is they asked to see some of my writing samples and essays I had to complete. Um, just because the admissions counselor could not see and the person that's interviewing me could not see my portal and see what I had written. So he asked for some of that information to ask questions on. So definitely be prepared with what you've written and understand why you've written your essays and the content about that. And be prepared to answer questions about why you want to attend that university, what would make you a good fit for that university, and what drew you to that university. Also, things along the lines of what programs you're interested in, why, and why you would be the best candidate for that program.
And also, I was only able to do one interview, but it was a little bit more informal. So it was with this lady who was a master's student at the university. And definitely you need to come prepared with at least 5 questions, because there's always time at the end. And she was like, do you have any questions for me? And then if you say no, it looks really bad. So you definitely want to be prepared. And they also can ask anything they want. So they ask what have you done in high school? Or they'll ask questions that have to do with you personally. So she actually asked me, if you could have lunch with any 3 ladies, alive or dead, who would it be? And that one kind of caught me off guard, but it's just really about handling whatever gets thrown at you. And so on the next slide, making a decision. Rebecca, do you want to talk about this?
Sure. So you definitely want to consider where you think you would feel at home and feel happiest. Sometimes this can be hard, especially this year we didn't have the opportunity to tour, but definitely there are programs and virtual tours that will help you get more involved in that. Talk to your family about cost and how they feel about you attending. Every situation is a little bit different with tuition, and so that can be a big factor. If you can't really decide, consider taking a tour like I mentioned earlier. That can really help to make you feel a sense of welcome and feel a sense where you should end up. And ultimately, you will end up where you're supposed to be, whether that's your dream school, a safety, or anywhere kind of in the middle. And so a lot of people think that just because they got rejected, that that's the end for them, and it's not. Rejection is just redirection, and if you get rejected from a school, it just means you weren't meant to be there. More than likely, you will end up at a school that you are really excited and passionate about, but there is always that chance for you not to get into some of your top schools. But don't take that as a failure or a setback. Just take that as a push in the right direction.
And so for some miscellaneous advice, never post your essay online, even if you remove your name. I think this one's kind of a no-brainer, but you can't really trust whoever's out there, and you'll never know if someone just takes your essay. So also, this is a big one because I did this. Don't spend too much time on Reddit and College Confidential. These are websites where people will often be like, here's my SAT, here's my GPA, what is the % chance that I will get into this school? And then everyone just says oh, you're gonna get in, you're not gonna get in, but what do they know? And people can often throw out old or unreliable information. So these environments can honestly be pretty toxic, just because it's kids always one-upping each other, oh, you only did an internship last year, I've been doing it since I was 5, I'm gonna get in, all these things. So definitely don't spend too much time on there, and just believe in yourself and don't compare yourself to others. That sounds very cliche, but it's honestly true, and you'll come to realize that. And when in doubt, you can definitely call the admissions or aid office. I was intimidated to do so at first, but they are super, super helpful. And as upperclassmen told me, it is their job to talk to people like you, and they enjoy doing it. So sometimes they'll put you on hold, but it's definitely worth it if you have questions that need to be answered. And if you have specific questions or you need advice about a university, you can always reach out to current students or alumni there. I know once I got into Cornell, I started reaching out to some people that I knew went there, and everyone is very helpful because they know what it's like to be a freshman or a high schooler and kind of being uncertain about your future, especially when you're deciding everything at 17 or 18 years old. So I think that is the end of our presentation. Do any of you guys have questions for either of us?
It can be about anything related to admissions process, when to start, or anything at all.
Oh, someone just left. But speaking of leaving, I have a debate event I need to do, so I will head out, but I'm sure Rebecca can answer your questions if you guys have any.
Yes, I will stay on. Thank you, Neha.
Yeah, thank you guys. Bye.
So, Alexis or Sonia, do you guys have any questions about admissions, when to start applying, anything at all? Just shoot.
I can't think of anything right now.
Sounds good. Well, thank you all for coming, and you all should have access to this presentation indefinitely, so you can use it as a tool to refer back to. Again, we really appreciate you coming, and if you ever have any questions, just feel free to reach out. You can DM me, Alexis. Obviously, you have my number. So thank you guys, and we hope to see you at some of the other sessions.
Thank you.